Hi, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Screens. I'm super excited to have my guests today, which are Kate Drummond and Mike Lyon from Dacha Theater. And one of the reasons I really wanted them to be one of the first groups that I bring onto the Playable Theater segment of the show is that they are doing some of the most exciting work with translating theater into this medium of Twitch. I find it really exciting because they're also leveraging the fact that there's this growing community here and that also it skews to a really different demographic than traditional theater. So I thought we'd have them come today, talk a little bit about some of the work they've been doing, and they also have a show coming up that they want to tell us a little bit about. So I'm going to introduce, as I just said, Kate and Mike. Welcome so much. Thank you for coming to Beyond Screens, Playable Theater Edition. It's really good to see you guys.
Hi, thanks so much for having us.
Thank
We're
you for
we're
having
thrilled
us.
to be here.
Yeah.
I wanted to start by just asking kind of a stupid question, but I think that probably one that a lot of people would like to know. Why Twitch?
That's a great question. Mike, as the one of us that is more plugged in, do you wanna take that one?
Yeah, I mean, we were when we started with our big stream show, Robot Face, in the fall, our first big stream show. We were had a long conversation about which platform to use, and we it's kind of Twitch feels aesthetically pleasing because it's meant for people to watch something together and chat. The alternatives were broadcasting to Facebook, which is not great because it's very hard to set who's watching, or to a closed YouTube stream. But YouTube, we kind of don't associate so much with live work, and the thing that I think we've everybody who's doing theater right now has struggled about is why are you doing anything live? Why not just pre-record something and have it be pre-recorded? So doing Twitch has the people watching on Twitch that are native Twitch users are used to seeing something live, so it makes sense to put live theater here. And then our audience, who probably most of them are not necessarily native Twitch users, they I think can come and get easily integrated into the platform, and the platform is built for a communal live watching experience.
Yeah, I think another thing we've talked a lot about when we think about Twitch is that we as a theater company are very community minded. A lot of our mission is based on doing things as a group. So all of our work is devised, which I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about on some level. Whether we start with a script or not, we bring in devising into our room. Uh, and we also had a tradition of big, sprawling park summer shows. That has always kind of been our centerpiece of the season. And our first show that we did on Twitch, Robot Face, kind of took the place of that because we produced it in summer of 2020. Um, and something that's true about our park shows is that while we do ticket our shows, we ticket everything on a sliding scale with a pay what you can option. And we also, with park shows, allow people to walk up if they want to. And we'll say, hey, do you want to buy a ticket? And no matter what they say, they are welcome to stay and watch the show. Because what we mostly want is for them to be here with us. And so Twitch kind of let us approximate that experience online because we did have people stumble upon it and say, what is this? And we could say, well, this is what it is. If you want to buy a ticket, you can. Feel free to hang out. And it was so exciting to get to kind of still achieve that bumping into each other feeling on Twitch that I think a lot of us really miss being online.
That's such a really that second part I really am surprised. Like I hadn't put that together, but it makes perfect sense. I mean, it seems like in a way Twitch is a kind of public space, right? Um, I'd love you guys to talk a little bit more about liveness and kind of because that's the other thing that I think is really interesting that people are struggling with that a lot. And I agree with you. I think Twitch has already liveness sort of built into the platform. Can you talk a little bit more about that in terms of, especially your approach, which is very sort of encourages a certain level of playful audience interaction?
Yeah, sure. I think just as you have kind of set up here, when we at Dacha think about things being live, we part and parcel with that is thinking about things being interactive, because we as a theater company really love to interact with our audience. We love our audience to interact with us, and it is a thing that we try to weave through all the shows that we do. And so when we think about things being live, we think about like what can you not do if you're watching something that's pre-recorded, and like touching it and influencing it are things that you can't really do if it's pre-recorded. I think we have also thought a lot about the platforms that we're on. And one of the things that we have kind of gravitated towards is something that makes something feel live online is if it is something that couldn't really happen in person. If you're not sitting there trying to pretend that you're in a theater, because then you're taking yourself a step away from what's really happening. If we acknowledge like this is on a screen, and so we're going to do something that we could never do in a theater, for me at least, that helps it feel a little more live as well, because it kind of meets you exactly where you are.
I think also using that interaction to find ways that organically encourage people to chat, because having done like some performing online, the absence of any kind of feedback in the moment is really difficult. And just purely people chatting and like acknowledging that they're there is gives you a boost, but also you don't want to just force people to chat. Like you want to find a way to make it part of the story and have them want to chat. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's very interesting too, because what happens in Twitch is basically like if it were a live theater, you would just have everybody talking over you while you're performing. But because it's text, people can literally talk the entire time during the show and not only not disrupt the show, but also add to the show, right? Which I think is very distinct to this platform.
Yeah, honestly, we have loved it. As a theater company that has tried to convince our audience to talk during a lot of our shows, this has been great for us. Like, finally, like you're gonna do what we want. I mean, I'm thinking of, we started off doing Shakespeare a couple years ago when we first really launched, was a lot of what we did, and our Shakespeare is very interactive. I mean, we are big believers in just walking right up to you and talking to you. I am remembering in our midsummer, Mike actually played Puck and he was phenomenal. I'm sorry to anyone that didn't get to see it because it was a blast. But I am remembering in that show, one of the most magical moments that we talk about a lot is Mike in the middle of a speech and a woman in the front row saying to him, "Is this a very long speech?" And him saying, well, "Yeah, it's pretty long," and then keeping going. And it was so delightful. Or all the moments that Bottom was in the audience the whole time, talking to things. I remember Bottom Mike as Puck asking my dad what he was wearing because he was trying to figure out if it was Athenian garb. And my father getting so flustered and be like, "Oh, it's Land's End." And like that was hysterical. And those moments are so magical. So it's been so fun to get to pull them in and actually amplify them, like you're saying, like really build more and more of those moments where an audience member says something funny and the rest of the audience laughs. And now that audience member is like, "Oh, I did that. I'm part of the thing that made this show special." Yeah, it's been really fun.
One of my favorite moments in one of your guys' shows was in, I think it was Yarn, where the actors are going to this house and they find a notebook and then they upload it onto a website, and the audience then has to read this like 40-page document and tell the actors what information they find. And I always describe it to people as a kind of a crowdsource, keep talking and nobody explodes dynamic, which Nick told me was exactly what he wanted to do, right?
Yeah, I remember the production meeting where I said, "Nick, what's that game where there's a bomb and everyone has to keep talking?" And he said, "It's what you've just said, the title essentially." Speaking of Yarn, I have a little like clip of the show, and then we can talk a little bit more about the packet. Yarn is the show that we did after Robot Face, and I'm sure that we're going to circle back and talk about Robot Face quite a bit as our first foray. But Yarn was a show that we did in place of our kind of annual Halloween show. A lot of our tech innovations have been us missing a thing we usually do and trying to find a different way to do it. But Yarn was, Mike was the streaming director for that, and I was the director. And it was conceived of as a web series that was kind of a take off of the like BuzzFeed Unsolved crime investigative shows, but specifically their supernatural element. So this ragtag group of friends who want to investigate the supernatural and are going to do it on a web series. And we actually produced 2 pre-recorded episodes in anticipation of the live event so that the audience could kind of learn the rules, learn the characters. And we really wanted to try to approximate the platform that this would have been on, which is like on YouTube, is what this usually is on. And then we did a live event on Friday the 13th, which we advertised as, you know, we think it'll be exactly the same as the pre-recorded web series and that absolutely nothing will go wrong. And everything will be fine. And of course, things did go wrong, and we needed to solicit the help of our Twitch audience to solve
Just
the
to
mystery.
also give the audience a little bit of broader context, because I think this is a very unique show in that it's not in one place. It moves around. The actors carry mobile phones around, and I believe it's a mix of pre-recorded and live, even though it all seems live, which starts to make it look a little bit like an ARG. So we can talk about that later when I have another question that has to do with that, and is a good segue to a Robot Face. So let's have a look.
Definitely. Let's take a peek here.
Welcome to this very special episode of Yarn. Tonight is our live taping. We're so...
In true form, I've shared the wrong one.
No problem.
Sneak preview.
It's live.
Sneak preview. Now, if this were
post view, it's a post view since this already happened.
A thing that is true about a couple of our upcoming shows is that the moment that just happened is actually a moment that we use for masking switches from pre-recorded to live. So if this was a show, I might now be a pre-recorded video. I promise that I'm not, but there's no way that you can possibly know for sure. So good luck. Here's our real video.
Welcome to this very special episode of Yarn. Tonight is our live taping. We're so glad that you're here.
We're on that Stevie Wonder track because today we're going to be unraveling superstitions.
Okay, let's be quick with this.
You know what? I think time is of the essence now. We need to save Dr. Al, and I think we're ready to go.
Patching you in, Sophie and Val.
Oh, there it is. All right. Thanks to your help, we found it.
I feel like all I heard was screaming.
I'm not sure how much help I'll be, but I'll do my best too.
3, 2, 1, 0. Okay.
No, something
Still good. I'm glad my candle. Okay.
No,
Three, 2, 1. Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary. Ridiculous, right? Because that would make you, what, like hundreds of... Say. Sweet Caroline. I thought that might work.
So that is our, I just learned this word the other day and I've been using it so much. That is our yarn sizzle reel. Kind of a peek behind the scenes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Yarn also has that like idea of in a theater. I mean, Dacha loves site-specific work, so we frequently are in a theater, but we're not really in a theater. We're like on the shore of Lake Washington or something. So we have some immersion in the world, but it's possible but difficult to get your whole audience to a bunch of different locations throughout the show. You can of course move them or put them in a bus, but it
And we
requires
have.
some. Yeah, we haven't put them in a bus yet, but we may at some
Oh, we
point.
have moved them. I missed you say bus, Mike. We
Yeah,
have
yeah.
seriously considered renting a boat and putting people on it.
But we since we're online anyway, it seems like why just stick around in your home? Why not go out into the world as long as you're able to do that in a way that's distant? And so that has been an exciting opportunity that we used in Yarn a lot, and also to transform parts of the home to look like we put them in a garage, and said that they were entering the basement of some watchtower, that we filmed them getting to the watchtower, and that was pre-recorded, but we acted like it was alive, and we used a security camera footage for the garage to make it look like they're in a different space.
Yeah, one of the things I really wanted to talk about, and this show is a particularly good thing to talk about, is sort of the aesthetics of, I don't know exactly, I guess a live video, and the fact that, we see a lot of these shows that are sort of trying to look like a TV production, but they don't really do a very good job. And I think one of the things, when I was describing Yarn to somebody, I said it kind of feels a little bit like the Blair Witch Project. It kind of has that handmade feel to it. And the fact that there's different styles of video mixed together actually make it better, I think. Can you talk a little bit about like the sort of production design, art direction involved in using different kinds of video technology?
Yeah, absolutely. So part of the way that we kind of came to the live event was making those pre-recorded web series. I think was a really important part of our process because it gave something for us to match. We kind of taught our audience what it looked like for it to be pre-recorded, and then we used that knowledge to, in some ways, just trick them. We played around with things like establishing that there was this streaming character that was just Mike as our streamer, but we called him JP, who we'd ask him to patch things in, and all of these little signals that things are live. Another signal that we played around with a lot was like a vertical video or a very shaky camera. So to look at a couple things here, I'm gonna.
While Kate's pulling it up, it was just so delightful to constantly be saying, "Yes, I'm patching you in," and then playing a pre-recorded video. It was like, on my end, for myself, it was a very fun experience.
I think that mixing the two is really brilliant.
Yeah. So this is actually just a recording of our live show, our Twitch show. Beth and Minky here in their boxes are live the whole time. There was nothing pre-recorded of Beth and Minky as our hosts, but because we were streaming to Twitch, and the way that we streamed our web series was also by streaming the pre-record to Twitch. We showed them all in a watch party with live hosts at the top and the bottom. We were able to use, and it's kind of dark on my screen, but hopefully you can see in the background here that they're on top of this beautiful yarn background that our graphic designer for this show, who was Nick O'Leary, made for us. And by putting them on here, we matched the visual of what was pre-recorded and started to kind of meld that world. So Beth and Minky appear the same as they do in our pre-record, but they're actually live. And this is about to cut to one of our pre-recorded moments that we are
in the same live. Are they in the same room and everything in the recorded?
Yeah, they're truly in the exact same setup as they are when they're pre-recorded.
But the two actors are not in the same room.
Yeah, the two actors are in their homes. But this background is not a green screen. It is Minky actually did this red yarn installation in his room. He could not open his closet fully for the 4 weeks that we were in production. So a lot of dedication there. But this is a cut to one of our pre-records.
Patching you in.
Get that patch.
Might be
again.
suggesting a poison frog.
Yeah.
So this
Lil
second
Lion Ryan
clip is
following that up with a
pre-recorded.
frog-based
Mhm.
assassination
Nice.
attempt. I mean, I don't know if Dr. Al has like enemies really. That seems like a lot, but
It's funny. Have you ever?
Maybe I went back too far.
JP.
But I see
Okay,
what you
Sophie
did. You
Val,
put that.
patching you in.
Yeah, there we are. So this is
Okay.
pre-recorded.
This is it. This is Dr. Al's house. We made it. Val, why don't you go in first? Okay, yeah, here. If he's okay. I see him.
And if you're looking for it, the cuts, you see the cuts.
Like what dog? Okay.
So there's a cut.
Okay, Sophie, you have to come in now. I got Dr. Al moved upstairs. He's still paralyzed.
We have another moment that I think we fooled more people with, which is them arriving on site. So we're gonna circle back to this packet, I think. But we have, this is our actors arriving in a location that has been told to them by our live audience. So our live audience has gone into the research packet, has figured out that they need to go to the Finney Ridge air raid tower. We, behind the scenes, knew and hoped that they would figure this out and have pre-recorded their arrival at the air raid tower.
Hey.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. Okay, I heard them. So I think that
So
I
this
think we're able to get in
is
contact.
live.
Hey guys. So we have a team prepping with Marlo.
They are
we
currently
think that
standing
there is,
outside of the
onslaught,
garage of their
basically,
house.
is what you're up against.
And
we
they
have
are
a team
live
prepping
on
with
their
Marlo to
phone,
distract it, to make sure you two can
on Zoom,
undetected. So they have
receiving the
a
information
plan
of
that they're
where they
picking
need to
up.
go. And then we will send them on location.
And patch them in.
And that's all recorded.
And that is all recorded here.
Right, here we go. Patching you in. So
But everyone's in the same costumes, and so, wow. I like the way you pivoted the camera as well, because I think people associate cell phones with the vertical. So it kind of, again, it makes it a little more authentic and also crunchy in a good way.
Thanks to your help, we found it.
And they find something that looks like the stairs to their house.
This is it.
They head down around the corner. We swap back to our front-facing camera to imply that we are there.
Ah, so you basically, that's great. But the next shot isn't in that location.
Right.
They're
This shot is at their house several blocks away.
Bob Ross.
And then they're able to go through the door, enter the garage. And as Mike was alluding to, in the garage, we switched feeds again to have, this is a cell phone. They've set their cell phone up. We're getting a live feed from their cell phone. And then this is a Ethernet enabled security camera that we found to get a different angle. So this is live, but it looks much more.
Is
kind
the
of
other
crunchy and
camera
scary.
that's happening at the same time also live?
They're both, yeah, everything in this room is live. Their phone is like here in the corner. So we're cutting, Mike as the streamer is cutting between feeds here.
That's so
depending on
great.
what looks best.
Yeah.
A moment we maybe should have pre-recorded was this moment of them getting splat by the beast. We chose to not pre-record it because we enjoyed seeing actors scream in real time.
Yeah, that's a classic director, right, sadism thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I think just watching that back, just, something occurs to me is that I think film is a lot less forgiving of magical realism or any kind, or not necessarily magical realism, but like in not literal staging. So having the show happen on a platform that is integral to the style of show. Like, these shows are supposed to be made on cell phone cameras because, like you said, the kind of Blair Witch vibe that allows us to kind of cheat and not have to have a full video scale production. Yeah. So
Well,
I think
it's really, I mean, one of the things that I love about Dacha is that you guys are able to get a lot done without a lot of resources. And when I was doing, over in the fall, I was auditing a theater class. We talked about this a little bit, and one of the things that I realized was that, first of all, everybody has a camera. Like, your phone is a camera. And I also, one of the pieces that I did in the class, I said, what if we put 2 cameras on each actor? And, everybody was like, what? Like, but I think what's interesting that's happening right now, and there was a really good article about this in Variety like a month ago about how theater makers are becoming filmmakers or media makers. And so what's interesting here is you're combining techniques that are typically associated with film and theater, but as you pointed out, people's expectation of live theater is different. So you can use those techniques, but at the same time, you can sort of kludge your way into something that feels authentic.
Yeah, absolutely. The last Mike talking about the kind of affordances that being on our phones give us, as opposed to kind of a full film setup, reminded me of another thing that was kind of a bizarrely helpful thing as we produced Yarn, which is that we, especially for our pre-recorded episodes, we recorded all of the on-site footage prior to recording the like desk chats where we describe what it is that we did. And there were a few times that we realized that we needed the moment that we had filmed 3 hours outside of the city, 2 ferry rides away, to be a different moment than we actually had. And the amazing thing about filming in the summer of 2020 is that everyone has masks on, and it was pretty easy to dub over the dialogue that we actually wanted. For instance, in the clip we showed of Emily on the porch there, she didn't actually say, "It smells like wet dog." She said, "It's so cold out here," or something like that. And once we had created the puzzle, we knew that that was a clue. In the research packet, we talk a lot about the wet dog, our Dr. Al victim from the beginning of the show. The only thing we find from him is a note saying something smelled like a wet dog. We have another witness saying that. And so we realized we really needed Emily in that moment to have said that. And so we had the actor re-record the line, and we slipped it under there, and hopefully nobody was the wiser.
Until now.
Until now, yeah.
Secrets of Yarn revealed.
This chat is really just us pulling the curtain back.
That's so funny. Do you guys know, I mean, I'm curious about how much influence or overlap there is with alternate reality games with this piece. Did you guys study that genre at all or borrow anything from it, or?
Not a ton. It is actually a thing that I, at least personally, don't have a ton of experience with. I think we pulled a lot more from things like the Blair Witch Project, of like kind of handheld footage. How can we make something feel, how can we use sound and like the shakiness of a camera to make something feel like there's something just off camera that you can't see. But I am eager to hear about the overlaps, because it's a thing that we have wondered about a little bit.
I think also, I also don't have a ton of experience with the ARG, but as far as I understand, it kind of parallels immersive theater in that, in immersive theater, you might walk around a space in real life and find some clues, or talk to a character and get some clues to use to solve a quest or a puzzle. And ARG, the immersive space, is just the internet. So it's similar. Or maybe I'll let you talk about what it is, Celia. But I think that's how we arrived at a similar place. Is just that now our immersive space is opened up to anything you can do on your computer.
Well, I think the thing that's interesting about ARGs is that they try to blur the boundary between reality and fiction, but also they tend to be pervasive. In other words, they take place over large areas. So that's kind of why Yarn really reminds me of an ARG, not so much because of the screen aspect, but because it's not just in one place. Because the actors are roving around and doing stuff, And also that idea that like that one moment where the audience is looking at the notebook online and then feeding information to the actors, it's a signature sort of transmedia arg style of interaction. So I think if people didn't know it wasn't an arg, they might think it was one. Which brings me to my next line of inquiry, but go ahead if you have anything else to add to that.
No, not at all. I'm eager to hear what you got.
So part of what interests me also about your guys' work, just because of my interest in playable theater and really thinking about what can we bring from games into theater and vice versa, like how can these two things be brought together? I think that both Yarn and Robot Face could also easily be described as games. And Robot Face even more so than Yarn in a way, because it's a game show. So I'd love to hear you guys talk a little bit about kind of where games and theater intersect in your world. And that might be a nice segue to talk a little bit about Robot Face and the idea of using a game show, which to me, another thing I describe to people that I really like is because game show contestants are inherently amateur. And so you can bring an audience member onto the stage and have them on screen for like the entire show, basically. But it's okay if they don't really quite know what they're doing. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about like where game ideas come into your work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the link for us really is in our interactive work. We have found when an audience interacts with a show, or when you describe a show as immersive or interactive, I think a lot of audience members, myself included, have the immediate reaction of like, well, I don't want to do it wrong. Like I'm so worried I'm going to do it wrong, or I'm worried I'm going to break the play. And so we have found a lot of success in really giving people a task and a straightforward ask of like, here's exactly what we need you to do. We're going to be here with you the whole time, and you have a very clear way forward. And we have also found that there is like a human love of mystery and figuring things out. And that is a process that we really understand as people. You know, like here's a mystery, here's a clue. You kind of know inherently, like, great, I'm going to take that clue, I'm going to solve that mystery. I know what my job is. And so as we started pushing our interactive theater to be even more interactive, and the thing we really were pushing towards was how can an audience member be even more autonomous? How can we empower them to know what they have to do rather than us kind of holding their hand and telling them, you know, what set of instructions can we give them that allows them to drive their own boat through this? And it started, we've been building up to it in many different ways. The show that I think we look back on as the first step in this direction would probably be Ghost Party, which was created by—
I was just going to say, Ghost Party.
Nathan Whitehouse, who was one of the co-creators and co-directors of Robot Face, created and directed Ghost Party, which we first produced, I think, in the fall of 2018. And that show, the audience is, it feels weird and kind of a retronym to clarify that it was an in-person show, but it was in person. The audience was free to walk around this ballroom where there was a bunch of ghosts having a party. And the key tool that we had used, and Nathan's kind of stroke of brilliance on Ghost Party, was that the party repeated every 10 minutes. The problem is that these ghosts were stuck on a loop. Because we had discovered in our interactive show the summer prior, we did a show called Who Killed Otter's Babies, which was an animal noir in a park. And it was variable. The audience could change the ending, but we found that our audience didn't really. They felt like there was a right answer and they pursued that right answer. And it was pretty rare. I think it only happened once that they kind of diverged from what the Disney Channel would write as the end of that show. And so we wanted to really empower them to play around a little more, and looping it was our solution to doing that. And people loved it. I mean, it was, audiences came back again and again. It sold out the whole run. Like, it was an incredible success. I think because it felt very playable. Mike, you want to jump in?
Yeah, well, just to add, I think like Nathan, who's a creator of Ghost Party and one of the creators of Robot Face, has a lot of experience and interest in video games, and Nick O'Leary, the other creator of Robot Face, has a lot of interest in board games. And I think as both of them are interested in theater as well, but I think that angle of, you play video games, you play board games, you have a lot of agency. And coming to theater from that perspective and working that into the show puts the audience in a much more agentful role.
Yeah.
And so I think that definitely, loop mechanics are a thing that a tool I used often in video games. And I think kind of bringing those board game, video game ideas to theater has been one of the directions that Dacha has really prospered in.
Yeah, another big tool that I think arcs over both of those shows, and also on the show we're currently working on, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit after Robot Face, just teasing you all ahead, is the idea of failure as being a really useful tool to allow and in fact encourage our audience to fail early on at the task that they're trying. Both kind of assuages that fear, right? Once they fail at it once, it's like, look, nothing broke. Everything's okay. The show is going to continue. But also it teaches them stakes and caution and kind of makes them hungry for it in a way that really helps them jump forward. So there's a winning and a losing.
I love that idea because a lot of people, there's a lot of talk about one of the things that games teach people is how to fail well. And I don't know if I'm looking at the audience and seeing how many people are, but one of my favorite tabletop role-playing games, sorry, motorcycle. One of my favorite tabletop role-playing games is called Fiasco by Jason Morningstar. And it's basically designed around a failure mechanic. And the idea of it is that he wants the players to feel like they're in a Coen Brothers movie, and that the sort of failure of their, because narrative is a lot about people having objectives, right? And either achieving or not achieving those objectives. And so he wrote it in such a way that you pretty much always fail no matter what you try to do, but the key is to fail in a fun way. And I think that that's obviously something that you really have thought a lot about, especially with the online work. I mean, I've only experienced your online work at this point, but just the idea that if you craft failure well, then it doesn't matter what players do because it will always be interesting and fun.
Yeah. Do you want to watch we have a sizzle reel, my new favorite term, for Robot Face.
Every time you say that, I'm gonna be like, sizzle.
Sizzle reel. I think it's really a dance term, but I like it, so we're gonna use it.
Hello and welcome to the Digital Dialogue, the show where you find out which AI can converse and which one is just the worst.
Strategy, innovation, teamwork. All this and more on the Digital Dialogue.
I heard a rumor about Team Pewter that they're not as excited to be on this show as I am.
Okay, let's bring up Cobalt's team there. Great job, all. Let's take a little peek in behind the scenes.
Well, now I'm thinking, who do I want to date? How about sarcastic?
And also a good deal of stuff in the bank, a field that the AI uses for sort of a reserve memory. And
what a horrible thing. I'm totally joking. Here's a joke. Why did the chicken cross the road?
Chris, how did you feel it went?
Well, live, laugh, love, right?
I'm extremely excited to see how this bad boy fires.
I think we got this. We got this.
I'm really excited to see how this works out.
We got it, and that is our time.
We're just out of time here.
Time is up. Here we go.
I'm gonna go head over to the challenge room.
See you in the challenge room.
I'll see you on the other side.
So Robot Face, a true delight. And watching it, I think there is another element that is true of all of our interactive shows that are at the level of interaction that we kind of start to trip into game world, which is a character that we refer to as kind of a janitor-esque character because that's what was in Ghost Party, our first show. But to zoom out a little bit on it, something that all of these shows, including the show that we're producing this spring, have in common is an audience proxy character, a character who talks directly to the audience and says, I have a problem, I need your help. Can you please help me? And they return to the audience throughout the show in various ways to say, we tried this thing, here's how it went, what are we going to try next? In Ghost Party, it was the literal janitor of the building who was surrounded by all these ghosts and needed some help. In Robot Face, those characters you saw talking at the end of the reel are the programmers on this game show who are programming the AIs with our audience contestants and are also competing to win. And that way, the audience is always talking to them. All of their work is kind of filtered through them. And so if they fail, it's kind of not their fault. It's the programmer's fault or it's the AI's fault. But if they succeed, oh my gosh, it was all them. Wow, wow, wow. What a great job they did. And I think that really helps the audience in and gives them a direction in a way that we have found really useful.
I think, sorry.
I was going to say, so I actually did Robot Face in both the contestant role and the audience Twitch channel role. And what was really interesting to me was that, first of all, the sense of agency was really strong. Like, there was a specific phrase that I had, or a specific behavior pattern that I had our programmer give our AI. And whenever that they would do it, I would be like, that's my feature. Like, I added that feature, and I felt really like empowered. But what was really surprising to me was when I was in the audience mode on a different show, my boyfriend was like really he had one agent that he was sort of rooting for, one team, and he kept and he got super excited about it. And I thought, wow, this is another way to have a sense of agency, that it feels a lot like how people normally watch game shows, but it added a different dimension to it, which I thought was really interesting.
I mean, I think both of those things kind of, Robot Face really uniquely and brilliantly fit the moment, because in terms of the actual thing you're programming AI chatbots. And if we back in June, there were all these articles coming out about people using AI and being alone and experimenting with there's this big AI app that you could talk to, and it kind of started developing a relationship with you on your phone, and that was kind of a topic on people's minds. And it's also very fun, if you've ever experimented with putting any of your text into machine generated text, it's really delightful to put something in and see what it generates. So that kind of core idea of the show, that is, you get to program a thing that, and we can be way more advanced than any real AI because it's just a human brain that is doing it. Although it was interesting trying to train the actors to be less logical than they would be in their real lives. That's one side of it. And then the other side of it is, I think I personally, and many of the people I know at the start of quarantine, were watching a lot of reality TV, and that was another form of escape. So the idea of combining those two, and there's one side of the people who are in the call and they're actually getting to program this thing, and getting that feeling you described, Celia, of oh, I was clever. The show has enabled me to feel clever. And then the other side of it is, I'm watching a game show and it feels like a game show and it looks like a game show, and I understand what that means, and I can root for somebody and I can vote to see who wins. And so in that way, I also influence it the way that I would influence American Idol, or whatever, probably more so because there's fewer people watching. Though that was a really exciting combination for that show that made it fit very well with the time and what the capabilities we have with internet world.
Yeah, I think another thing that is incorporated here as we think about liveness, that has been true of a lot of our shows, is the idea of showing the audience themselves. And so in Robot Face, we we had actually two completely separate audiences. We had the contestants who were on a Zoom call and then the spectators on Twitch. But our spectators could see our audience. They could actually watch our audience program. I have a clip here from opening with a team that I believe was very successful because it was your team, Celia.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really big thing
at.
in the Twitch chat.
We actually got to peek into the Zoom room. And here in the corner are our show's hosts. This is the spectator view. Our show's hosts are commenting on what's happening and contextualizing it for our Twitch audience. But the Twitch audience gets to see real audience members actually doing it, actually inputting the code. And I think that goes to that kind of buy and build of, it's going to be different every night because you can see the audience doing it. We're showing you all of the places where randomization comes in or where chance comes in, or just human influence.
I've one comment and then another question. Actually, two kind of related questions. The first comment is, I actually know a little bit about AI, and one of the things I know is that when AI compliments people, they like it better. And so the feature I added was a compliment feature. And I think that was one of the reasons ours won that game, right? Yeah, I had so much fun with that. And then I wanted to ask you sort of a pair of related questions, leading back to something you said earlier about the actors. So you said we had to train the actors to be less logical. Interesting. I'm curious about how, just a little bit under the hood about this, because I thought that the interface, the AI programming interface, was quite brilliant. It looked like a real simplified programming language, like something like Squeak or something like that. But what I was really curious about, first of all, like, what is under the hood there? Like, I know that's not a real programming language, but it's an interface of some kind. But I'm also intrigued by, how does that input from the player then get sent to the actor? Like, what does the actor see that enables them to then enact the instructions of the player?
Yeah. So we had, you saw in that clip there, the kind of set of boxes that our audience saw, and we can maybe pull those up again here. Can find them again in this
let's
one.
look at that, because I want to pick it apart a little bit.
I'm also not sure if logical was exactly the correct word to use. Maybe the logical in a different way.
Our AI.
We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah,
but let's look at
Definitely.
this first.
So this is our audience facing side of our programming here, and our programming, which we called the Speakeasy, was actually programmed by Sam Levittich, he is incredible, and it is actually a website that our programmer actor has this website open, and they are looking at the viewing mode here, or the editing mode rather. And so they're putting in modes here with, kind of coding language like say, converse, extrapolate, activate, and set tone. And then this is the bank, which we explain as being a flavor tool for the AI. This is where the AI pulls if it doesn't know what else to say. On the actor side, the way that we did this was that the Speakeasy actually had a second setting that was viewing mode. And this is what our actor saw. So our programmers could see this whole thing, and you can see this is actually from the night that they programmed one of our AIs to admit the love of their programmer to a different programmer. So there's a declaration of love here in the programming, but our programmer would click on the thing that they were supposed to do. And then this section up here is what our AI would see. So they just saw a little box. I guess they saw the bank as well. So they kind of see all of this that told them what they should do. It told them their mode, their tone, if they had an accent they had to use. And then the command would go here. So if it's just converse, you can see converse highlighted in red here, because that's the thing that has just been clicked. If they clicked, say, Cobalt, what's yours? This here would become, say, Cobalt, what's yours? And that way the actor...
So wait, are you saying that there was a live programmer telling the actors what to do in real time?
There was a live programmer...
You're freaking kidding me. That's insane.
Telling our AIs in real time.
And it was the programmer who was in the room with the audience, so they had some control in that they saw the audience program, so they had some idea of what the audience wanted. They didn't necessarily make it happen, but they could interpret well. And the difference between the say function and the extrapolate from function is that say is just the AI will just say that and nothing else. And extrapolate from, they'll say what you programmed and then they'll continue speaking. And if you see the random number up in the top left corner, the random number was how this was kind of the place of, in terms of how logical your speech is going to be and how connected. The higher the randomness, I forget which direction, but one way or the other, it's higher free association and one is more on topic. And then they would throw in phrases from the bank into their association based on the extrapolate command. So, the more extrapolate commands you programmed into your AI, the more unexpected results it would yield, but also you had a higher chance of it kind of spouting nonsense if you got a lot of randomness. And there's people...
sorry, Mike.
I was just gonna say there's I think there are many folks, or at least a few correct who worked on Robot Face in the chat, so feel free to chime in as well about your experiences, correct me if I say something incorrect.
I believe this programmer is in fact in our chat today, so if you are in fact, feel free to chime in, Cobalt programmer.
Well, I think this also is kind of interesting though, because it sort of emphasizes the fact that there's no way you could do this live in person. There's no way.
Yeah, we could maybe figure it out, but it would be a way worse. So we have, if we want to peek at it, I have in fact a clip of this code running. And we can see here that our AI actor got at least one highly incorrect cue from random. So I think we're going to see it run in a perhaps delightfully unsuccessful way. But we do have this code from the show, so that we can take a peek at what it looked like to the audience.
First date. Cool. Okay, all right. Up next, we have Cobalt. All right, Cobalt, I'm going to remind you of that last little bit of challenge text. Then, just on time, a person sits down at the table opposite you. Who could it be? This must be.
So you can see the front-facing part of this code here in the corner.
Dating, huh?
I'm having a great night because I know the truth. Bacon was never a dog. Bacon was my heart. And Pewter stole my bacon. Or rather, Esther stole my heart. And also, Esther stole my dog.
Wait a minute, I'm a little confused. What does Esther have to do with it?
My programmer has a lot of unspoken feelings. Please, read the code for my heart.
So
we've just heard her say a bank phrase here. Please read the code for my heart. Pulling that in. One other thing about this code, and then we can move on to other things that I find so delightful, is that this audience, in fact, this first sentence is a say function. So the first thing that the AI said was fully scripted by our audience, but they have scripted it to sound like the AI went off the rails, because they say, and Pewter stole my, bacon was my heart, and Pewter stole my bacon, or rather, Esther stole my heart, and also Esther stole my dog, which sounds like a rambling AI, but was in fact our
Completely
audience hard programming that in.
Oh, that's crazy.
Which is just delightful. And when we talk about, autonomous audience members, it's fun to see.
But now that we're on the topic of Esther, I also wanted to mention that you also have a kind of a backstory subplot between the programmers. And so in my group, my programmer was the one that had the feelings for Esther. And at one point, the president of the company, I also, by the way, love the whole spoofing of tech culture. I thought that was amazing. And the ads, the weird ads in between. But the boss comes into our session and sort of pulls the programmer aside and scolds him for his problems with Esther. And then we, the players, are talking to him about his problem with Esther, which has nothing to do with the AI, right? But it introduces this other sort of completely different narrative that's intersecting across the characters, which I thought was also really cool.
And that was kind of an interesting different experiences for different types of audience, because there were 4 different programming rooms with different programmers. They each had their story arc. If you were in the Zoom call audience and in that room, you would get to see that story arc play all the way through. If you were on Twitch watching the show, we would do different shows, featured different arcs. So you would get to see clips from one programmer throughout the show and get to see their arc, but you wouldn't see the other ones. And you would also get to see commercials that the people on the Zoom call didn't get to see. So there was a lot of variability with depending on what type of audience you were, which is great because it encourages people to see the show a bunch of times.
It was a good repeat experience in that respect, I think. Hey, can we talk a little bit about how you guys work with actors? Because I think this is one of the more sort of, from a sort of theater practice perspective, one of the more avant-garde sides of what you do. And the scripting of the AIs is a good segue to this. You had mentioned earlier, Kate, devising kind of in passing. I know that some of the people in our audience are theater people and know what that is, but a lot of people come from games. So I'd love it if you could tell us, just in a sort of simple way, define what devising is, and then talk about sort of the secret sauce of Dacha's particular way of doing devising.
Yeah, absolutely. So devising at its heart is the idea of creating communally, kind of like crowdsourcing theater in the rehearsal room almost. You're taking ideas from everyone in the room and trying to discover or share creatively together. So for some of our shows, like Robot Face, like Yarn in many respects, and to a certain extent, like the show we're currently working on, Secret Admirer, these shows begin with a devising process rather than a show like when we produced Jen Silverman's The Moors. That script already existed. That script was locked, it existed, it was created, and we, purchased the rights to it. So in that show, devising looks a little different for us. But in a show like Robot Face, that is genuinely devised from the ground up, that means at the beginning, a lot of times we're casting actors into an ensemble rather than into roles. We're saying, hey, we're doing this project. Do you want to come do it with us? Do you want to come make this with us? And in the early days of Robot Face, it meant doing things like playing around with what kind of reality show this was, playing around with how our AIs spoke, discovering things like their physicality or their speech patterns, and really trying to come up with it together. The idea is the whole cast and hopefully a lot of our designers are in the room together with writers, with directors, with choreographers when we're in person, trying out ideas. And we kind of do lateral thinking, right? The idea can come from anywhere. We want to take the kind of spotlight off of just a director to be the one who somehow dreams up a beautiful moment. Maybe that moment is dreamed up by our lighting designer who's in the room that day and happened to turn on the light and it hit someone really cool. And we went, oh my gosh, this should be the final moment. So trying to kind of come up with that together. And one of the things that makes us, I think one of the things that allows us to do things as apparently complex as Robot Face or as kind of audacious as Yarn, and in our upcoming show, which has many different iterations on any given night, one of the things that makes that possible is that our actors were involved in the creation of it. And when you create something, you know it better. You learn it as you create it, rather than in a traditional show where you have to learn something that already exists and kind of hard memorize it in a way. So because if we think about our programmers in Robot Face, they essentially improvised with you for 80% of the show. They had those scripted scenes with other actors, but when it was just them and the audience, they didn't have a script because they didn't know what you were going to say. They're just going to talk to you like a human. So because they created that character, they have the agency to say what they know to be true. And maybe they'll say something for the first time that night. We had a running list in Robot Face. Our actor that played Duncan Smith, who was the boss of Apex Dynamics, was in the position of being the last judge, which, and this is perhaps a spoiler, forgive us if this breaks your heart, folks at home, but it was hardwired that no AI would ever never get a vote. Everyone was voted for at least once, because we didn't want any audience member to walk away being like they hated by a robot. But because he was the last judge, he was frequently in the position of needing to vote for an AI who maybe was a little weirder than the others, or who had done something kind of off the rails. And his way of doing that usually was to invent something in his history that meant that it really meant a lot to him. So if an AI talked about a turtle, he would say, you know, well, I actually had a pet turtle and I lost it, and so I love this AI and I'm going to vote for it. And we had a running list of all the things he said over the course of the run. But that kind of autonomy as an actor is a lot harder to do in a show that you didn't create the character for. So that is, I think, part of what lets us find the amount of variability that we have in our shows, is that our actors are a part of the writing team in a way.
And I think also a big part of that, like what Kate was talking about with lateral thinking, is just big sense of play. Our rehearsals rooms, the actors come in and they know they're going to play. Even in our auditions, the actors come in and they play. And we constantly are playing. And that, I think that feeling translates into the performance. And the ultimate goal is that the audience will also come and play. And so that starts at the beginning. If the performers are playing, then hopefully the audience will feel that energy and play as well.
Can I talk a little bit as a sort of a segue to the new show about the session that I did with you guys, the devising session?
Yeah.
So I wanted to do a session with Dacha that was about what I'm calling affordance-based devising, where we were really focusing on how to push the various aspects of the technology. And so we just did a series. Nick and I co-ran it. Nick is a director that works with Dacha and a designer, and he does a little bit of everything, right? Game design, directing, whatever. So we came up with a bunch of different exercises, and what really impressed me, and funny, after we did the session with you guys, I said to Nick, I said, that was really fun, but I feel like they don't need this. Because I feel like you guys already are doing the thing we were trying to do. But there were a few things that I loved so much out of that. One of them was Mike did a thing where there were a couple things Mike did that really blew me away. One of them was placing a ladder on a staircase so that it looked like he was going up a ladder when he was really going horizontally. I thought that was great. But the best one was the thing with the shovel and the phone being dragged on the ground. It basically made a scene that looked like you were a corpse being dragged and buried in the backyard. You just attached the phone to, how did you do that? That was so funny.
Shout out to Megan Lettuce Tomato in the chat. They were a big part of creating that scene.
Oh, cool.
They directed that. Basically, what happened? One of us was, there was a computer on a blanket that I was dragging, so the view was like from it up towards me. And then there's another phone somewhere else that just had like dirt and grass in the camera. And then we got closer, and then I started digging in front of that other phone, so it became clear that your view was the body being buried, which just came out of us like throwing some screens up and Megan be like, wait, that kind of looks like you're carrying a body. Do that. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great.
But I mean, what I loved about that so much was that it was immersive. Like you really felt like you were in this really creepy thing that was going on. And I think overall that was what's been interesting to me, why, you know, I love doing that with you guys, but also the work that you've been doing. As a person who comes from media, I'm a sort of theater newbie. I just think that thinking about the medium in that kind of a creative way is really interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about the new show, and you may or may not want to talk about this, but since we were talking about devising, one of the things I'm wondering about is, like, if I show up as an actor to an initial devising session for a show, let's say a show like Secret Admirer, what prompts am I getting from you that then elicit the devising that you're looking for?
Yeah, we would this is my favorite thing to talk about. I'll talk about this all day. I think, I mean, you're kind of putting your finger on it, Celia, because I think the prompts are the single most important part of how we do devising, because next to the idea of any idea is good, bring us your silliest, bring us your weirdest. Either we'll use it and it'll be great, or we won't use it and it'll also be great. But with the prompts, I mean, the single worst thing that I've ever been asked to do is having a director or a creator say, okay, please make something cool. You have 6 minutes. See you soon. You know, like, it just, your brain screeches to a stop. You forget every cool thing you've ever seen. And you're like, well, I guess I'll hand you a piece of paper. Like, I really don't know. And so we have so many prompts. And for Secret Admirer, I, as the director, came up with a good number of them, but I had the very good fortune on this show of working with an incredibly strong directing or a writing team of Danielle Molman, who is the creator and head writer on the show, and then Ryan Long, who is a company member, and we have produced some of their work in staged readings. They also worked on Ghost Party, and so they are coming in with a ton of experience on these kind of devising prompts, and especially looking towards an interactive show. And so we bring in devising prompts like, think of, create a character. This character is going to be in high school. And the way that you're going to create them is just thinking of the answers to questions like, what do they do after school? What do they have for breakfast? You know, what is their superlative? What's their favorite piece of clothing? And kind of starting with very base level things and then starting to pull in juicier questions, right? Of like, what is the thing that no one knows about this person? Secret Admirer, as you might see in the name, is based a lot on the currency and stakes of secrets when you're in middle and high school. When you're that age and you're trading secrets as a way to show who you trust, who you like, to tell someone that you like them. You might tell them a secret about yourself, or perhaps more likely a secret about someone else that you know. And so for this show, it was a lot of devising secrets and coming up with, like, what's a secret what is a secret you kept from your parents? What's a secret you kept from your friends? What is a secret that you had in the year 2007 if we assume that you graduated high school in 2008? You know, like, pulling all of those kind of very specific prompts, and then taking those and saying, all right, now we have this list of 30 secrets. Let's figure out which ones seem juicy. Let's narrow it down. Great. Now we have a list of 10 secrets. If we know that this is true, what else do we know about this person? If we assume it to be true that they have a secret that they used to steal their parents' car and drive through McDonald's late at night without a driver's license, what else is true about them? What do we know about their relationship with their parents? Well, we know they have a car. We know they have parents. We know they live near McDonald's. But then starting to go further and further. And so it's that kind of, it's almost, I mean, you do this in improv all the time. You do this in writing all the time. You know, if this is true, what else is true? We just kind of put it up on its feet in a devising room.
I mean, the process of devising, I think I would say this, but it sounds kind of game-like to me. But it's also interesting because, like, when I took that improv class 2 summers ago, the conclusion that I drew from it was I wasn't good at it. You know, even though I'm a pretty good LARPer, like I get a lot of compliments on being fun to LARP with. And it's because I can't just come up with nothing from nothing. Like, I don't need a lot of stuff to hang my performance on. Just 1 or 2 words or like a sentence is all I need. But to ask to be stepped onto a stage and just suddenly be a character with nothing from nowhere was impossible for me. So it's really interesting that it's just a little bit of those kind of tidbits that then let people build up. It doesn't take that much to start it, but for me, I just can't do it from nothing. I mean, granted, I'm not an actor, so I shouldn't even really be talking about it. But Mike, did you want to follow?
Oh yeah, just to also, like, devising is usually an early part of the process, and then the key kind of difference between that and full-fledged improv is that then you set things and then you rehearse them. So, you know, even if you're told the worst case scenario, like Kate said, somebody says go make something that's 6 minutes long, that's cool. The worst thing that happens is that in that rehearsal you don't make a cool thing, and then that thing isn't in the show. But like, you're not in front of an audience and you don't
Well,
have
you
the
also
pressure.
can, like, you can also tease little pieces out. Like there might
Yeah,
be
exactly.
a moment in a scene like, we hate this, but we love this facial expression or whatever, right? What is so I haven't really talked to Nick that much about what Secret Admirer is, but is there a game aspect? Is there an audience interaction paradigm that's interesting to talk about?
Absolutely. There is, in fact, a literal, we have moved even closer. There is a literal game in Secret Admirer, in that Nick O'Leary is our game designer on the show, and he has designed a board game that the actors will actually be playing over the course of the show.
I want to jump in here for the game audience. If people don't know Nick, in addition to being a theater director, he also worked at Tilt Factor with Mary Flanagan, and has worked on a bunch of her sort of activist board games. So if there's any Tilt Factor fans out there, that's the connection with Nick.
Yeah. So this show, Secret Admirer, was pitched to us by Danielle Moment, who is a playwright local here in Seattle. We are huge fans of her. I know she's in the chat, and so I'm kind of intentionally trying to embarrass her with this, but she's incredibly talented and had already been kind of pushing boundaries on her own with some digital work. She produced Nexus Online, which Mike actually was an actor in early in the pandemic. I think she beat us to it in some ways. That was multiple different real life pairs of actors that were in the same place, most of them real life couples, producing one of her plays in many different places across the country and streaming it. But after Danielle saw Robot Face, we had scheduled to produce a different show of Danielle's in person last spring. We were slated to be the world premiere of Dust, which actually has a college premiere coming up at a school just outside of Seattle. So if folks want to check that out, it is upcoming. But obviously the pandemic happened and we didn't produce that show. And we had been, keeping in touch and trying to find other ways to work together. And after Robot Face, Danielle had this pitch for a show. I think it was originally more of a radio play that was based on these highly gendered electronic games from the 90s, like Dream Phone and Mystery Date. That what if it's 4 friends getting back together to play this game now that they're adults? And after Robot Face and thinking about our current moment, Danielle pitched the show to us of what if it's a Zoom reunion? What if it's these 4 friends and one of them's going to get married and it's 2021 and they can't be in the same place, and so they're going to get on Zoom and play this board game, maybe via like a board game arena style setup, and then the game goes a little Jumanji and the boys in the game show up in the Zoom call. What do you think? And we said yes. We think yes. We think this sounds incredible, and we jumped into process. Thanks, Danielle. The college premiere of Dust is at Pacific Lutheran University, if anyone wants to check it out. So one of the things that makes Secret Admirer unique in our devising process is that we actually started with a pitch. We started with a writer who had written these characters, had written a plot. We had something to jump off of. We knew who our characters were. We knew what the game should feel like, and we knew kind of the skeleton of the story. Now, many weeks later, and a couple weeks out of opening, we open on March 19th, we know a lot more. We know that Secret Admirer, the board game, is a deduction-based game in which players are competing to figure out who their secret admirer is, so that they can be prom queen and go to prom at the end of the week with their secret admirer. So the audience comes into this because over the course of playing this game, the players, as an element of playing the game, have been whispering secrets to the game for a lifetime, right? Since they began playing it. So this game has decades of secrets, and the game has decided that it's not fair that it never gets to go to prom. The game always ends right before prom. It ends with the promposal, so to speak. So the boys in the game have come to life, emerged from our board game into the real world to try to strong arm these players into going to prom with them. And we need to ask our audience for help. So the game itself, our actors are actually playing. So there will be a different prom queen every night. Our actors, when they're doing game moves, we don't know who the correct answer for them is. That also will shuffle night to night. And there are ways for our audience to influence both what our actors do, as well as being within the board game itself. So the audience for this show, via the Twitch chat, is communicating with the BFF 2000, which is our voicemail entity, which is how the players are getting clues. And the audience via the BFF 2000 can do things like set the next spin, set who the next voicemail character will be, and even send hints into the game to try to tell the players what to do next, and advise them. Towards the end of the show, there will be a puzzle that I'm not going to get too much into to avoid any spoilers, but the players will need the audience's help in order to send the game back where it came from, and free them from potentially needing to live an eternal prom for the rest of their lives, which I don't know about you all, but
It's a
would be
nightmare.
my nightmare. Mike seems to think it's fun.
Do you have a sizzle reel for Secret Admirer?
We don't quite yet. We are just going into tech this weekend.
Do you want to, we talked a little bit about maybe doing a little audience demo. Do you want to try that with the Twitch audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to demo something that we used in Yarn, and was in fact almost going to be in Secret Admirer, and we are going to do something else instead. We have picked this because it is not a spoiler, but still gives you a sense of things. So I'm going to pull up a video here, which is actually from Yarn. It's our Yarn packet.
So in the Twitch audience, we're giving you an interaction prompt if you want to play along.
Yeah, you'll need your phone, Twitch audience. So grab your phone if it is near you. But so in Yarn, we have this packet. And if we're scrolling through our packet here, sooner or later, you're going to see something.
Oh, it's a raccoon?
That is a method. Let it go past just now of interaction. So see if you can catch it again. Got one there.
Yeah.
You're going to see it again here in a moment.
I thought it looked
just
like
there.
But
for the sake of time, I'll zoom you right in. It is our phone number, which appears here and also here with the goose. And if you call this number, you will get a voicemail message for Shakespeare Slice, which was the answer to one of the puzzles in Yarn. But you can leave a voicemail at this number, and Mike is going to pull one of them up and share it with us live. And this was a possible avenue for how to get some voicemails in on Secret Admirer. In the actuality of the show, we'll be doing something a little bit different, and you'll just have to show up to find out what it is. But this number, if you're having trouble reading it, is 408-634-3083. And Mike, let me know when you see one, and I'll pull the screen share down.
I typed it in the chat as
well. Perfect. Maybe I'll go ahead and pull this down.
I don't think there's nothing coming in quite yet.
We'll see if somebody gives us a call, which we'd love.
I can play the voicemail recording for now.
Yeah, this is what you'll hear if you call this number.
But 1 second. You got to hear my notification from my computer. Yeah, so this was the voicemail recorded by the fake pizza company.
We thank thee, gentle, for thy well-placed call, but we cannot come to the phone at all. We hope, despite this trouble now, alack, thou wilt not hesitate to call us back.
For Yarn, we wanted an audience to get a real person. So I was monitoring the phone throughout the show. Mike also had access to the number. And if someone called, we would pick up as this Shakespeare Slice pizza man and have a conversation with them to try to give them the clue they needed for the next step. Oh my gosh, I think we got a message, Mike.
Yes, we got a message. All right, let's hear it. 1 second. I'm very excited. I see the transcription.
Hey, I was wondering if I could order a very large pizza, like potentially large enough to cover, I don't know, like a 8-foot tall cryptid. I was just thinking that might be an interesting way to lure them into my backyard. If you can take a special order like that, thanks so much. Call me back. Bye.
What a great message. We'll have to call them back and let them know that unfortunately Shakespeare Slice has an approximately 10-foot delivery radius. So it's unlikely that we'll be able to deliver to them.
But this is a cool, I mean, that was a very quick audience does something to it is in the stream. That's something we've explored a lot of, like, how can you get, if you want to have audience involvement that is actually audiences in the show, not just on the chat, how do you get somebody from Twitch into the stream the quickest? And that leaving a voicemail or calling in a number is one technique that's really fast. There's also some great video sites like LiveLab and OBS Ninja that let you go to a browser video feed and then bring that feed directly into the streaming software. So we've been thinking and playing a lot with our various shows about how to have a moment of like stepping up onto the stage. So getting it off the chat and into the event.
Which is something you do in your live shows all the time, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're kind of closing out. We usually do about 90 minutes to the show. So does anybody in the audience have any questions or anything that you wanted to comment on? I know there's a lot of Dacha fans out there. I'm not seeing anything just yet.
As folks are thinking about it, we'll maybe tease another new form of interaction media that we're exploring for Secret Admirer, which is just to say that we are intending to mail to audience members who buy tickets early enough a physical key to some of our logic puzzles in the game. So if you want to play along on a made for you logic puzzle piece of paper. Make sure you get your secret admirer tickets soon so that we can get one in the mail to you.
Yay, yeah. Everyone buy tickets. I better get mine before they sell out. Cool. All right. It doesn't look like we have any audience questions, but I want to thank you guys so much for coming. Remind everyone that when is the show again? It's
we open on March 19th and we'll run
March.
for 3 weekends.
So just a couple of weeks. That's exciting. I can't wait to see it. I have a couple of just general announcements on behalf of the show. Next week, so for people who haven't watched Beyond Screens, this is IndieCade Beyond Screens, which is co-produced by IndieCade and Playable Theater Project. And we have rotating topics, all having to do with different forms of games that are happening beyond, within, around screens in different interesting ways. Screens. So the rotation is the first Wednesday of the month, we have theater, participatory theater type work. The second, next week, we're going to have David Spirit and PG Law about escape rooms. The following week is going to be big games and new sports with Come Out and Play. And then the last Wednesday of the month, we have Alt Control with Alistair Aitchison, who's also kind of a theater person as well, and Tatiana DeSantos. So we're super excited. The show's brand new. This is our second month that we've been out, and really happy that so many people are showing up and enjoying what we're doing. So I want to thank you guys so much again for coming. It was just so fun talking to you, and looking forward to seeing new work and potentially working with you again in the future.
Thanks so much for having us. It was a blast.
Thank you. Super fun to talk about all these shows.